Good morning, church. Good morning. Oh, no. Good morning, church. Good morning. There you go. Gilakasla, welcome. Nugwam Ingrid Brown. My name is Ingrid Brown, and it is my pleasure and delight to welcome you to your church. I am not Reverend Karen, as you can tell, but she is a good friend of mine, and I am standing in for her today. I do know lots of you because I've been around here several times for several years, and so it does feel a little bit like coming home when I come here. So thank you for welcoming me with so much grace and gratitude, and I offer that same to you today. Before we do anything, I want to acknowledge that all of us here in this building are on stolen territory. This is the unceded territory of the nations now collectively known as the Comox First Nation. And it's important that we acknowledge that anytime we gather, especially as the church, particularly as the United Church of Canada, because we have to tell the truth if we want reconciliation. And the truth is that the church doesn't have a great history here, so we have to keep telling the truth. Some of you will know that I'm the minister at Weird Church in Cumberland. We meet at 4, which is why I get to be with you here this morning. And one of the ways that we are working on decolonizing ourselves is through language. And so I wanted to share with you a word in Kwakwala. We're on the Kwakwaliwak, the territory of the Kwakwala speaking people. And so I want to teach you a word today. And this is a repeat after me situation. So I'm gonna break it down into 3 parts, and then we'll work on it together, okay? So the first is Hu, Sa, Sha, Husasha, Husasha. It means to rest. And the word itself has almost a rest quality in it, doesn't it? It's almost like, Husasha, Husasha, rest, Husasha. Don't worry, I'll remind you later. And if you want, you can ask me again at coffee time afterwards, which leads me into announcements. We will be having coffee in the fellowship hall after. You can go out that way and shake hands with me or wave or elbow bump, whatever you're comfortable with, and then go that way. Or if you don't want to do that, you can sneak right out through that door. We've got some other announcements. There's so much happening here. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, there's something for you every day of the week. So come on out. The announcements, I believe, are also in your bulletin, in your weekly email, on the website, probably on the Facebook page, probably there's a carrier pigeon someone will send to your house if you need to know these things. And do not forget, it's on the screen and it's in the bulletin. So don't give Reverend Karen any grief for it not being in the bulletin. Let's go to the next slide. There is the chair dance coming. So make sure that if you want to sign up for that, you hit that email, trinitydance@shaw.ca. Let's pop over to the next one, Glacier View Lodge. Oh, today, 1:30. Share some songs and some short readings. And Carol is going to play the piano there? All right. Thanks, Carol. Awesome. So if you want to connect with Carol after the service to talk more about that, you can. UCW, awesome. Monday, September 11th. That's tomorrow. Come on out, 1:15. New members, welcome. If you're not part of it, it's a fantastic piece of United Church history and present work that is just incredible. So UCW. Is that men's breakfast? Man, there's no shortage of things to do here. Holy moly, it's a good thing some of you are retired. Saturday, September 16th at 9 a.m. Scott's right there. Give a wave, Scott. If you need to check in, ask questions, sign up. He's your guy. And not next Sunday. A week from next Sunday, soup and bun lunch. Because community that eats together stays together. I think that's it. Oh, there's a mystery coming. Get ready. I don't know what it is, so it really is a mystery. Okay, that was a lot of words. Don't worry, there's more words from me coming yet. But What I'm going to do first is invite you to take a big deep breath in and just let it out. There's a lot that we had to do to get here, and there's a lot that we're probably going to do after this. And so when we breathe, we start to align our body, our brains, our hearts, our guts, all in the same place. In Kwakwala, the word for breath of life is hase. And so when we use our hase, we connect with the divine, the creator, to ground us in this present moment and allow us to join together in worship and song and wisdom and sharing. The song that I chose first to start us off today is a new one. And so I'll let Paul say things about that. Okay. There once was a man who did such incredible things and said such fantastic things that people began to follow him. But they didn't know who he was. So one day, someone asked him. He said, "I am the light." Many years ago, someone shared the light with me. Many years ago, someone shared the light with you. Today, we hold the light together, knowing that the light of love, the light of hope, the light of peace, the light of Christ is for us all. Would you join with me in the call to worship? In the beginning, God created all things, and God saw that they were good. At our beginning, God created us, unique and irreplaceable, loved and wanted by God, known and treasured by God even before God created us. In all our new beginnings, God creates something new. So we see God in the freshness of this morning, in the laughter of friends, in the colors of creation, and in this beautiful place. Would you pray with me? Holy and redeeming God, dreamer of creation, open our eyes to see your presence, our souls to sense your presence, and our hearts to love your presence, ever here in your creation and ever beyond it in eternity.
Good morning. The scripture reading today is from Genesis chapter 1, verses 31 to chapter 2, verse 4. God saw everything that God had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that God had done, and God rested on the seventh day from all the work God had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that God had done in creation. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Holy Scripture, Holy Word. Thanks be to God.
I want to offer you, let's get that up there, and then I'll turn this on. I'm going to offer you another translation. This is from the IHB translation, the Ingrid Harloff Brown translation, which is both translation and interpretation. God saw everything, the land and the seas, the stars and the comets. God marveled at the big and the small, the galaxies and the microorganisms, and saw that it was good. It was indeed very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. And so the dream was complete. The cosmos and the planets and all the multitude were underway, expanding and becoming. And so God took a holy pause, not an exhausted flop, but an intentional stoppage of work to take time to reflect on all that had come to pass. And it was such a good idea that God blessed the rest and reflect day so that all would have the instinct, the invitation to do the same, to gaze lovingly over the earth, reflect on the week's work, and breathe. So what is rest? I took a whole month off in July, month where I was able to get some rest, and a month where I thought a lot about rest, what it is not, what keeps us from rest, what keeps us from actual rest. So, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Is this microphone off? Yeah, okay. We'll just deal with it. Are you okay? You can hear me fine? Yeah, okay. There's a little ringy. Maybe it would be better if I did this. I'm looking at the boss in the back. Is that better? Yes. I have a neurodiverse family, and so we hear ringing in different ways than some people do. So I'm very aware of that. Okay, how do you define rest? Please remember that I am a minister that likes to be shouted at, so please shout at me. Quiet? Peaceful. I heard it from two sides. It's in surround sound, okay? Not restless. What was that? Still? Unbusy? Change. Did you say that? Oh, fantastic. Maybe you should give the sermon. Okay, what was that over here? I missed it. In nature. Ooh, yes. Someone asked me what my bumper sticker would say. I'd rather be preaching. I said, no, I'd rather be in the forest. What else is rest? Restorative. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to play a little game. What is rest, or is this rest, I should say. So I'm going to show you some pictures. Well, actually, Marilee's going to show us some pictures. So, is this rest? No. Maybe. Right? Okay, what do you mean by that, maybe?
Well, sometimes these chores or activities that we're doing that are sort of mindless can actually be meditative.
Yeah.
And quite restorative in a way.
I'm going to sum up. Hold on. So sometimes these things we do that are repetitive can actually become meditative and restorative. But, and
if my house is a mess, I can't rest.
If your house is a mess, you can't rest. We are getting somewhere now. Okay, next slide. Is this rest?
Yes.
No, I heard a no. No. You know what? This is my 12-year-old son vision of hell right there.
Yeah.
Sitting by the fire with a book? Oh. Okay, next slide. How about this? I know that that is not restful for me. Some people love paperwork.
If things have gone to hell at home, if things are bad at home, there's been times when I've been really good.
Right. If things are bad somewhere, you go, oh, hello, nice pile of paperwork that I can control. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next slide.
Yes.
For some.
So my grandfather, God bless him, he raised 3 daughters, and while my mom is the middle one, and so 3 daughters, and my grandmother went back to university when the girls were small. So the girls were all still in school, and my grandmother went back to school at night. So kids would come home from school, she would pick them up, and then she would go to school, and he would make dinner, get them ready for bed, get all that's underway. So this was a very long time ago too. And the only rest he got was on Saturdays when he was going fishing, because he had to get away. But on the other hand, a good friend of mine works at a fishing resort, and so this is work for her. Okay, next slide. What about that? Is that rest?
Sort of. Can be.
Okay, next one.
Yes.
Ah. For some, it depends. Who sees this as rest? Yeah. Who sees this as, oh my gosh, they want to eat again? Right? Okay, next. Is this rest? This is the most controversial one, right? Because her body is at rest. She could be reading a story. Thank you. Yes, I check out books through the library on my phone, and I read them. So it looks like I am scrolling social media some of the time. She could be reading.
She could be observing some funny memes, some mindless memes.
She could be looking at hilarious cat videos, funny memes. She could be trolling some terrible website we have no idea about, reading the comments and getting increasingly more agitated. She could be FaceTiming with her best friend from elementary school. Or her great-grandchildren. Well, man, I need her face cream if she's got great-grandchildren. All right, I think that's the last one. Yeah, so the reading that we shared with you today is from the book of Genesis. It's a book in the Torah, the Jewish scriptures, as well as the Christian Bible, and it comes after that beautiful metaphor that describes in poetic story from the Big Bang all the way to the culmination of the earth as we know it today. Is this where our view of rest in our culture today comes from? I mean, we can give thanks to all of the union leaders and everybody who made a 40-hour work week. But this is actually where it comes from. It comes from this Judeo-Christian narrative. And actually, Jews, Christians, and Muslims all recognize a 6-day creation narrative. Most of us will understand that as metaphor. A 6-day story that culminates for Christians and Jews into that one day of rest, that day set aside for ceasing toil, stopping the everyday work of life. And so in the past, that meant no food prep. Everything was done the day before so that you could rest. And it also, shockingly, meant rest for livestock and even your slaves. God took a holy pause
not an exhausted flop, but an intentional stoppage of work to take time to reflect on all that had come to pass. The story has a little bit of a different ending for Muslims. God didn't rest on the seventh day. God went on this heavenward adventure, but there is still this day of rest built into a Muslim's week. Instead of the regular midday prayer on Friday, midday prayer commences the Jumu'ah, which is a very similar idea. So in the Quran, the Muslim scriptures states, when the call is proclaimed to prayer on Friday, hasten earnestly to the remembrance of Allah and leave off all business, because that is what's best for you. So all across the world, across religious tradition, there is this day when the work of life is put aside and folks are to focus on rest, family, and connection with the divine, with God. And that is all well and good, and actually very important, I'd say. And even then, the practice of Sabbath was in radical opposition to the colonizing forces and social expectations of the time. Who lets their cattle stop working for a whole day? Who lets their slaves just sit around for a whole day every week? But we're talking 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. I mean, life was different, right? Was it? We may not have slaves or working animals, though I think some of us actually might have a few working animals. But setting aside actual rest time continues to be a decolonizing practice. It is a countercultural exercise. And I use the words practice and exercise really intentionally, because it doesn't come naturally to us. We think it should. Like some of us have had children, some of us have nursed those children, and if you've done that, then you think it should happen naturally, but someone has to show you how to do it. But it also didn't come naturally to the Israelites all those years ago, the ancient Jewish people. It doesn't come naturally, and we tend to lean too far in one direction or the other. We overdo it, or we tend to use less colorful language here, F it all. It's hard to find the middle ground of the swinging pendulum of what rest actually is in our culture. Something we have to earn. I can't rest until my house is clean, right? Or something that we don't deserve. Or maybe it's something that we do all the time and we just cannot get ourselves underway. Rest, though, takes a decision to do the work that needs doing on any given day, and then to take that time for that holy pause, to take in the beauty of the earth, to reflect on the week behind us, not to zone out or numb out or check out, but to actually lean into life. Simple, but it's actually not very easy. I've been thinking about rest, about Sabbath a lot after my month off in July. I ceased the toil of my work at Weird Church. And of course, life, kids, household continues, right? There seems to be no end to laundry and dishes with a 12 and 14-year-old at home. But this year, for the first time, I felt like I really skidded into my holidays. Do you know what I mean? After a few days of what I have now come to understand is called Herkel-Durkel, means to lounge in bed long after it is time to get up. So after some Herkel-Durkeling, I realized actually how exhausted I was. But it didn't seem to make sense to me. I take time to rest. What was missing? So I did some reflection on the quality of my rest. How much of my rest actually involves a screen? probably more than I would like to tell you right now. Which sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole around technology and research what happens to our brains on social media, watching TikTok or YouTube, or even just watching Netflix or a TV show. And maybe you already know these things. But what happens is when we look at those memes, when we scroll through, when we do these things, we get these hits of dopamine and serotonin, happy chemicals in our brains, which should be good, right? Happy feelings equals happy person. Makes sense? And usually when we do these things, we are sitting or lying down. Okay, body at rest, brain getting boosted, win-win. Except that's actually not what happens. Because what I learned is even though my body was at rest, like that woman right there, my brain wasn't. So getting such rapid fire hits of these happy hormones is actually quite exhausting for our brains. It tends to make it harder for us to lean into activities that actually give us measured, right-sized for our human brain size amounts of dopamine and serotonin. So it's kind of like the decision when we feel a little rumbly in our tumbly to reach for a banana or reach for a donut. The more we choose the one that gives us immediate relief and release, the harder it is to make the choice that we know will nourish and sustain. So when we are seeking rest and we reach for a screen, it makes it that much harder next time to rest without it. So the question today is, what would it take for you to set aside an actual day of rest? Not a day to lay in bed and binge watch Yellowstone or veg on the couch and watch an endless stream of hilarious cat videos. Or to comment, or even to get on the screen with your beloved grandchildren. What would it take for a holy pause, an intentional stoppage of the work of life, to take time to reflect on all that had come to pass? That's actually hard. For me, that meant the opposite of the way I had been trying to rest throughout the year. I moved my body and I rested my brain. I rode my bike and I kayaked and I swam and I walked and I played football and frisbee and lacrosse and hockey and all the things. I also sat on the beach and I watched my kids. I took some deep breaths and I looked out at God's glorious creation. These ancient people may not have been facing the same challenges that we do with smartphones and climate change and doom scrolling and blue light retinal damage, but they were human, like we are human. And they came to know something beautiful about living life well, about living life with God well. And if it is good enough for God to rest on the seventh day, if it is the guidance of ancient people, our spiritual ancestors, if it is a framework that has withstood time and geography and circumstance and technology and war and genocide and has broken through race and class and gender and religion, then probably it's a tool, a practice, an exercise that I can pick up. Probably it will shift and center and teach in untold ways. And so today, I'm going to do a couple of things a little different than the norm here at Comox United Church, because I can do that because I get to go home after this. You can tell Karen how much you didn't like it. I'm going to play a song. And it's a piece of music curated by a woman who started something called the NAP Ministry. The NAP Ministry. So she was in seminary, and she was burning out, and she was watching her seminary colleagues burn out. Seminary is a minister training school. She was watching her fellow seminarians, ministers to be, burn out all around her. She's like, we all need a nap. And this sprang forth from her grandmother. So her grandmother was the first descendant of freed slaves. And her grandmother and her mother had to work 5 times as hard to get half as far. And one thing that her grandmother did in between working her 3 jobs, she would sit down on the couch for 15 minutes and she would close her eyes. She said, Grandma, why you gotta nap all the time? She's like, just because my eyes are closed doesn't mean I'm sleeping. I'm talking to God. She had a rest practice built into her day that allowed her to continue. Well, this NAP ministry went on, continued to grow. Today it is a whole situation. It is a whole expansive work. And there's a book that Tricia Hersey wrote called Rest as Resistance, who talks about pressing back against the grind culture, pressing back against that voice in the back of your head that says, you have to finish this before you can rest. You haven't earned this. You can't do this. Get busy. And so this is her music that we're going to share in a moment. And then we're going to just share a few ideas about it. So it may be totally different than anything you've ever heard before. Don't worry, it's only 3.5 minutes. Let the music wash over you and listen for what catches your ear, catches your heart, catches your guts. See what happens.
So the question is, can you turn me down? Okay. The question is, when's the last time you took an actual rest? And I don't mean like you're retired rest. I mean like a holy pause to stop, to take a look at God's beautiful creation and reflect on all that had come to be. Thursday, yes! Sue, I want your life. No, just kidding. Well, it does involve sailboats, so it's probably pretty good. What did you have to do to rest on Thursday? Away from home on a boat. You were secured? Walk on the beach. Watched as the sun went down. How much organizing did it take to get you to be able to rest for that day? But I mean, to get the boat to Henry Bay with all the things you needed, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, right? That rest, vital, important, soul fueling, important stuff. It takes work to get us there. And it takes a decision. At some point in that, you made a decision, I'm going to go on this trip. I mean, it didn't quite go as planned. You're here. We're glad you're here. Who else has actually rested recently? Right? How many of us are there here? Okay, how recent is recent? Okay. You went on a bus trip to Oregon in July where somebody else took care of all the arrangements. Okay. How long were you away? 6 days. I'm assuming you paid for that trip. Oh, yes, was the answer. Oh, yes. Did you have to do a lot of preparation? Yeah. Right? So there was sacrifice involved. There was financial commitment involved. There was a decision to put this time aside. Can you imagine if we did this one day out of every week? We got all our food ready the day before. I hear you saying something very important. What is it? That's right. That's right. All like practicing Jewish households do this. I had a setting on my fridge where the light wouldn't come on because you can't have unnatural light. And so if you wanted to open the fridge and keep the Sabbath, you had to have it so that you wouldn't have the light come on when you open the fridge. So there was a Sabbath setting on my fridge, right? So you got to buy the right appliance. Woo. We don't have to do that today. Okay, but what would it take? What would it take? Even if you can't do a whole day. I mean, these are new muscles maybe for some of us. We have to get exhausted at 15 minutes first, and then half an hour, and then an hour, and maybe half a day. And maybe we need to spend a lot of money. We'll just leave it at that. To go to Hollyhock or Oregon or whatever it is, to get away to be able to rest. That's actually not what the guidance here is. How do we stay and look and sit without distracting ourselves, without busying ourselves, without guilting ourselves? I should be doing this other thing, right? This is actually one of the first spiritual practices that God invites us into. I have blessed this day. I have set it aside. If I can do it, you can do it. Let's do it together. And so the invitation is this week to consider how can you actually make this a discipline? Because it's a discipline, right? I got up this morning with every intention of listening to my morning meditation and doing my yoga, and I didn't. I sat and drank coffee and pet my dog, which, I mean, is a rest in itself. But spiritual practice takes discipline, right? And this is a spiritual practice. And so the invitation is, how could you, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, half a day, one day, find your way into this practice? One of the things that I think is important too is accountability. So like tell someone. We don't want to tell someone that I'm going to set aside this time, because what if they judge me? What is my partner going to say if I'm like, you know what? Tuesday, I'm not going to do anything. Yeah, there's laundry there. Yep, there's dishes there. Sorry, I am practicing my Sabbath. What if someone shows up at my house and it's a mess? We have a lot of barriers to actually being in this practice. So the invitation, take a look at your relationship with rest. Notice whose voice is shoulding all over you from the back of your mind, and see what it would take to actually live into this call to rest. I'm going to invite us to stay sitting for this hymn, if that's okay with you. We'll go through it several times and just let it wash over you. Join in your voice, or let the voices of those around you carry you. Just allow the words, be still and know, to flow through your body.
We'll sing it 4 times through, everybody, but the 3rd and 4th times we'll do it in a round. Pulpit side and then piano side.
Heavenly Creator, bring stillness to our hearts. Pray with me. Empty our minds of other things and direct our thoughts to those who especially need our prayers. When we reflect on how you have supported and cared for us in the past, we cannot fail to give you thanks.
when we consider the way you give us courage and help for each new day, we are filled with a sense of gratitude and praise. When you lift us from the pit of doubt and despair, our whole being feels renewed and refreshed. What a comfort it is to know the love and support you bring to us through your Son and by your Spirit. In our joy, do not let us forget those who know little else but sadness. In our sense of gratitude and praise, do not let us forget those whose lives are filled with regrets and heartbreaks. In our feeling of support and guidance, do not let us forget those who feel they have struggled against life's difficulties and disappointments alone and uncared for. In our desire to give you praise, do not blur our vision of the hardship of this life, the despair of the homeless in our cities, the feelings of guilt by parents who cannot feed their children, the worries and fears of those in hospital, the isolation of the lonely, the deep sense of loss to those in bereavement. Today we pray for our immediate family of God: Bill, Clint, David, Stephen, Gracie, for Valerie Best, who's waiting for a kidney transplant, and for Mackenzie, who we hope has a painless and quick healing, and blessing her family also. And now we also speak aloud or within our hearts for others not named. Give us strength while we live out our life on this earth to show the compassion and the caring of Jesus, so that we may share it with those who are without hope. For we ask all these things through Jesus Christ as we sing the prayer of Jesus.
Thank you. around the world. But first of all, I wanted to tell you that even though we did not have very many people in the church in July, because we were all spread out around the valley, during 1 week in July and 4 weeks in August, because of your generosity and your sharing, I have a check here for $235.90 going into Coins for Sleeping Children around the world. All of that money will go to the children. There is no middleman. So thank you very much. Now it's time for some more.
We were in Calgary last Sunday, and I had a significant birthday. I'm as old as you.
Last weekend, we were in Cranbrook celebrating our youngest's wedding. The next day, same as Valita's, was my dad's 89th birthday, and Scott and I celebrated our 38th anniversary on Thursday.
My daughter-in-law's birthday yesterday.
Our third great-grandchild was born on Tuesday.
Now, a lot of you know that I'm going to be disappearing out of this valley for 6 months. So, yes, we're going a long way. We're having an adventure. So, I have birthdays to cover. Mine. Heather Daly. My Karen's anniversary coming up in January for here. My two grandchildren, my grandson, and a few people around here who I usually celebrate, but I really don't know their birthdays right now. So I'm paid up.
Fantastic. And here's one for my wedding anniversary. So there you go. You can hear me, right? Yeah, okay. One of the wonderful things about being called into the Christian life is that we support and bless those far and near. And one of the ways we bless those who are near is through our offering. We are not going to pass the plates. So there is a plate on the back, and there's lots of ways to give at this church through e-transfer, online giving, or automated monthly giving. But while we sing and before we pray, the ushers will bring forward the offering.
All
you hold up your hands like this with me? Holy One, we ask your blessing on these gifts, the financial ones, as well as the gifts of our very selves. Use them, multiply them like loaves and fishes to be of service in your great creation, in your beautiful world, so that all may know they are truly loved. Amen. I'm going to bless everybody first. Just because my back is towards you doesn't mean you're not also receiving the blessing. So, as you go out into this week, as you leave this space or close your laptop, I don't know where the cameras are. Oh, they're everywhere. There are cameras everywhere. As you finish your time in worship today, and you step back in to life outside these walls or life outside that square, do so with the full assurance that you are loved. The one who created the heavens and the earth, the microcosms, the dirt, the worms, the stars, made you, called you by your name, and said, "This is my beloved, my precious child." And then sent a teacher to remind us of our belovedness, because we sure forget things easily. And then because that teacher couldn't be with us every day, infused us with their spirit, so that everywhere we go, every step we take, we are breathing, moving creatures of God, precious, worthy of rest, worthy of love. And remember, there is nothing that you can do that will shore up, strengthen, grow your God's love for you any stronger, because it is at absolute max capacity. But there is also nothing you can do that will ever damage, destroy, wreck, displace God's love for you. You are God's beloved. And I dare you to walk in the world with full confidence of that belovedness. Amen.